Hello dear viewers. I'm back again with a classic vlog style video again. I wanted to just talk about some updates and stuff. So I do have some more traditional ASMR videos that I was wanting to plan to record and stuff. I do have one that I'm kind of excited about coming up. It's kind of like a role-playing ASMR video. But unfortunately, that's gonna be delayed because I wanted to use my Maya hand in that video, and my Maya hand is broken right now. So I have to get it in and get it repaired. I do have an appointment set up for that for this coming Friday, which is a week out from now, unfortunately. So, but once it's fixed, expect that video sometime next week, maybe during the weekend or early in the week. But I'm going to take a break from dream entry ASMR videos for a while because I'm running out of material in my journal, and I don't really have anything lined up as far as Reddit stories. So I'm going to wait until I have a backlog. Wait until I have a backlog of videos before I upload more of those. Try and get more people stories from Reddit before I get more of those uploaded. So it's gonna be a bit for those. So in one of my previous ASMR, dream entry ASMR videos, I had mentioned, or I had a couple ideas for videos. This video being one of them, because I was wanting to talk about my psychedelic trip experience when I was on mushrooms. That experience was shortly after my accident. I want to say like a year after, I think. So everything was still fairly raw, and was still fairly I was still going through a lot mentally at the time. So I think it was in the year 2021. I think it was in that year. I think it was summer too. I can't remember what month it was, but it was in summer. And I had just eaten a ham sandwich, I think. I'd made it, I'd put lettuce, tomatoes, and everything on it, made it all up and everything. And I was planning on tripping. I was planning on taking 3 grams of dried psilocybin mushrooms. I was still living at my parents' house at the time because I had I'd been in a life or death situation, or an accident that almost took my life. So I was still recovering from that during that time, and I was still on workers' comp, so I couldn't go to work. I was still on workers' comp. I had lost my trailer because I couldn't stay there anymore because I was on workers' comp, and I couldn't find any place to rent while I was on workers' comp anyways, because they wouldn't take it. And so that led me with one option, that was to stay at my parents' house and recover and recuperate. Which, I needed that anyways, because there was no way I was going to do that. Living in a trailer on my own, because kind of needed looked after, especially that first year after the accident. But anyways, the day of the trip, I was contemplating heavily doing the trip in the first place, because it was the first time I'd ever done psychedelics like that. I'd done edibles before, and I kind of had somewhat of a grasp on a psychedelic experience, because marijuana at a high enough level can actually induce a psychedelic experience. Not many people know this. I guess people do kind of know it, but a lot of people who smoke it don't know this. If they've never done an edible before, unless you've smoked it for the first time, and maybe you smoke a lot of it, maybe you'll get like a hint of what I'm talking about. But you really have to smoke a lot to have the kind of experiences that edibles will give you. And there's reasons for that. When you smoke it, you're inhaling it into your lungs, and then it goes into the bloodstream, and then it enters your brain from there. And then, the experience happens. But there is a difference, smoking it versus, taking it orally as an edible. Because when you take it as an edible, it goes into your digestive system, and then it goes into your liver. And there is a difference when it enters the liver. It's then, the chemicals are transferred into, the THC chemicals and the cannabinoids and everything inside the liver, and that's where the chemical reactions take place, and as they enter the bloodstream and they enter your brain that way. But it takes longer. So keeping that in mind, if you've never done edible before, you don't want to take too much, because especially for your first time, because when it goes through your digestive system, it hasn't entered the bloodstream yet. Like, it has extra steps when you take it orally, so it's going to take longer to enter your bloodstream and to enter your blood-brain barrier. So it's going, usually for me it takes, I don't know, maybe a couple hours before it finally starts to kick in. Sometimes it does take, sometimes it doesn't take as long. Sometimes it takes like an hour and a half before I start feeling it. But I don't know if that's the average person, because everybody's bodies are different. Everybody digests things differently. Everybody has different levels of what's the word I'm looking for? Has different levels of when your body digests stuff. What is that word I was thinking of? Anyways, you know what I'm talking about. God, I forgot that word that I was thinking of. Metabolism. When everybody metabolizes things differently. And the body, everybody's bodies are different in that regard, is what I was trying to say. And so people have varying levels of tolerance and like varying levels of how much they can take. I have a high sensitivity to edibles versus smoking. It's weird because I can smoke so much. I can smoke way more than I can take orally. It's weird because ever since I've started taking edibles, it's like I've changed the dynamics between smoking and eating it orally. And it's weird because it doesn't affect me nearly as much as it used to smoking it versus edible form. So usually I peak around the 3 hour mark, and then I start coming down shortly after that. Well, 3.5, 4 hours I start coming down. But there was one instance that I wanted to talk about. Well, actually, a few instances I've had of this, but this one I wanted to talk about because it was the most I'd ever taken of THC, and it was quite an experience because I went to a friend's house. I used to buy marijuana off of him, and I'd also buy mushrooms and stuff. So I'd go over there, and sometimes my dad would go over there too. And I went over there one day to get weed for him. And I was just visiting for a bit. I didn't plan on doing anything. I just wanted to, just kind of get the weed and go home, and, But this guy, this friend of mine, this other guy was there. He was also buying some weed from him, and we'd stayed there. He was probably there for like 15-20 minutes. He wasn't there as long as I was. And this friend of mine gave both of us a little, like it was like this big. It was like maybe like an inch, like a square inch, like thing of brownies. And he gave me and this other guy a piece of it. I'd asked him before I ate it. I was like, "Is there THC in this?" And he's like, "Yeah." I didn't realize how much he put into it until I'd already eaten it. He told me that he put 8 to 10 grams of pure THC, like dabs, the wax stuff. Usually the wax stuff is like resin that you get from THC. It's like pure THC, but it's like a waxy like form. And then usually you could take that and you put it in like a dab smoker or something. But anyways, he put a lot of that stuff in those brownies. And mind you, I only took a square inch piece, a little piece of this. And I was there visiting with, that one guy had long since left, and I was still there around an hour at this time talking and watching shows with them. I didn't feel it coming on though, is what's weird, the whole entire time I was there. I had left, and I was driving, I got the weed from my dad, and I was driving back to my parents' house at the time. And I was, upon driving back, it still hadn't hit me yet, but I was starting to feel something coming on. Like, I knew I needed to get to my parents' house fast, um, before it hit. So, I'm driving. I turn the music up just to calm my nerves, because I've got weed in the car, and if I get pulled over, I'm screwed. I get pulled over by police and stuff, because this was back before they made it legal in Ohio. And so I'm driving. I got this extra stress of having weed in the car and being high at the same time. The highest I've ever been on edibles, mind you. And I'm driving a good 45 minute drive back to my parents' house. And midway through the drive, I start to forget where I'm at. And this is one of the first times I've ever experienced this. I mean, I've experienced this before when I was the first time I ever smoked. Some of the first times I ever smoked weed. But that was a long time ago. And I had since then built up a tolerance to smoking it. So this was a first for me, especially on edibles. And I forgot where I was. I forgot what road I was on. I forgot what I was even doing. I probably shouldn't have been behind the wheel. And I parked because I was freaked out. I was freaked out. I was starting to hyperventilate at this point, and starting to go into a panic attack because I'd forgotten where I was. It was like my sense of direction was off. It's like I didn't know where I was in time and space. And I tried to call my parents, and try to explain where I was at. And the interesting thing about this was that I found it hard to describe where I was, or figure out what road I was on. Now that I think back, I know what road I was on. I was on Boomershine. But I didn't know the road name at the time. Like, I'd forgotten what road I was on, because I was getting so high at the time that I didn't realize what the name of the road was. Okay, I gotta switch over. Sorry about that. So, here I am, hyperventilating on the verge of a panic attack, and I'm trying to call my parents. It's broad daylight out. I've got weed in the car. I'm freaking out. I'm high as a kite already. And so I'm trying to explain to them where I'm at. I forgot the name of the road or the street. And I'd finally, because I had told them landmarks that I had gone by. Like, I went by the Germantown Metro Park. I was still able to remember certain places before losing total grip of reality. So I still remember certain places, certain landmarks, and my dad was able to pinpoint where I was at in a general area. He's like, I'm on my way. And they drove to the road I was on. He got out. I sat in the passenger side at this point. I had my caution lights on, just kind of waiting for him. And he got in, and Mom took off. Mom took over and drove the truck back. And Dad drove my car. And he was just kind of asking how I was, and just making sure I was alright. And I just told him, I just want to get home. I'm fine, I just want to get home. Because I was relieved when he got there. because I felt so much better. I felt so much more at ease that somebody I knew was there, somebody was taking control of the situation and getting me out of there. And I was so thankful at the time. And so on the drive back to my parents' house, I'm realizing at this point that I'm barely holding on to reality. I think the thing that kept me grounded was my dad being there and asking me questions and just making sure I was okay. And so he'd had a Baja Blast sitting there because they had gotten Taco Bell, and I was just drinking it because I was so thirsty. Actually, I don't know if, I don't think, I think he said he had it there at the house. So I'm having massive cotton mouth at this point, and which pretty much means I'm pretty high at this point, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, I'm so thirsty. He's like, I'm trying to hurry. And I'm just sitting there like, I feel like I have like this fear around me. And I was trying to explain this to my dad at the time. I was like, yeah, I feel like I'm in this bubble. Like this bubble is like surrounding me right now. And I feel like I'm floating or like hurtling through time and space at the speed of light. But I feel like I'm like going through space and time at light speed, or maybe even faster. It could like, it might as well have been, because it felt like I was zipping in and out of reality. And we got back to the house, and at this point I felt like I was underwater. And I felt this way before when I first started smoking marijuana. Like, it just felt familiar to me. And I'd felt like I was, it's hard to explain, but it's like I felt like I was like submerged underwater, and I felt like everything was kind of like, it felt like I was moving underwater. It's hard to describe. It's like I felt like I felt like the air was thick. Like, the air around me was very thick. Like, it was almost like water. Like, it was it's very hard to describe this. I'm sure people probably experience this too. On a high enough edibles or something, or psychedelic experience. But this is where marijuana for me at that time became a psychedelic experience. And on high enough doses it'll do this for me. Like, it'll just be a psychedelic experience. Maybe not quite like mushrooms or LSD, but it has its own feel, and it can definitely be an experience like that. So finally I'm able to drink my Baja Blast and relieve some of the cotton mouth. And I'm sitting there talking to my mom and my sister and my dad, and we're watching this show, and everybody's eating their dinner, and I tried to eat. This is weird, because I tried to eat. I was hungry. Like, I was hungry, but the food felt weird in my mouth when I tried to chew. It like felt like it was disintegrating, and it was like doing all this weird like morphing and shit, and it just felt very uncomfortable. And when I would swallow, it was almost like uncomfortable to even swallow. It's hard to describe. Like it was just hard to swallow, and I could feel it like going down my esophagus the entire way, and like hitting my stomach, and like I could even feel the splash of the stomach acid. It was really weird. It was really weird. I could feel everything in my body, like my heartbeat, my every like internal process in my body. I could feel like my breaths and stuff were a lot like more like I felt like more alive than normal. And so there was one point where we were watching this show, and there was a scene with this lady, these two ladies who were talking. I can't remember what the show was about. All I remember was the scene where these two ladies were talking. And this one lady shows up on the scene, and I noticed her skin starts changing colors, and it started changing like this red color, and she started growing horns out of her head. And I'm sitting here and I'm like freaking out, like, is this part of the show? Like, is this actually happening? And I also noticed that she started speaking gibberish, and it was almost like an alien was talking or something, like an alien language or some kind of demonic language. I don't know, like, I couldn't understand a word that she was saying. And it was almost as if she was like speaking to me in a weird way, which freaked me out even more, because I was just like, this demon lady's like talking to me on the TV. I don't know what she's saying. And I tried to explain this after coming down. Well, I tried to explain it while I was high, but I just couldn't find the words for it because I was just in shock at what was taking place at the time. I don't remember much after that. Like, I think I must have just been in a daze after that. I eventually did start coming down enough to where I could eat. It still felt kind of weird to eat, but I was pretty hungry at this point, so I just ate, you know. And I remember when I went to sleep that night, I fell asleep. I was able to sleep, but I woke up in the middle of the night and I was still high. But I wasn't nearly like as high as I was, like, but I was still like high enough to know that when I woke up, I was like, man, I'm still feeling this stuff. Like, it's been hours later, like several hours later at this point, and I'm still pretty high at this point. That's one of my most powerful experiences on an edible I've ever had. And I wanted to bring that up because that's one of the first times I'd actually experienced a psychedelic experience on edibles. I'm sorry if you're yawning so much. But that was one of the first times I'd ever experienced a full-blown psychedelic experience on edibles. And so, going back to my mushroom trip, I think this was sometime before my mushroom trip. And, so I decided that day, after I'd eaten my sandwich, I decided, you know, I'm going to take the rest of these. And it's funny because I'd bought these mushrooms like a couple years ago, before then, and I was just reluctant on trying them because it just freaked me out, because I wanted to try them, but at the time, I wasn't in the right headspace, and I just wasn't like, I was working a lot, and it just kind of freaked me out at the time. But I had already been through so much in my life at this point. Like, I'd almost died from an accident. How I went through that powerful experience with the brownie that I'd eaten. So I felt like I'd pretty much made up my mind at this point that I was going to take the rest of these. And so I did. I ate them straight up. I didn't put them in the sandwich. I just ate them straight up, and it's weird because people say they taste gross and everything, but these actually tasted like chicken. It's like I was just eating chicken, like weird, like dried up chicken, but I was eating chicken. So I took the rest of the mushrooms that were in the bag, and it equated to around 3 grams. Because they were fairly strong mushrooms. It's crazy because they hadn't lost their potency. I mean, I'm sure they have, in like the couple years I hadn't taken them, I'm sure they probably would have been more potent had I taken them 2 years prior, but they were actually still fairly potent. So I'm sitting there, I'd already taken the mushrooms, I'd already eaten, I drank some water, hydrated, and I sat down and I watched some YouTube videos on my iPad, and I just kind of sat there and I waited. I watched a bunch of like happy, like trippy videos, like a bunch of off the air videos and stuff, just to kind of get my mind right and get in like the right headspace. Watched a lot of lighthearted stuff when I was coming up initially. In the first hour or so, I didn't notice much anything, but there was this one point I was watching the off the air stuff, and like I was the last one that I had watched. I just kind of put the screen down, and I looked up at the carpet, and the carpet was doing this interesting, like almost like static, but it's hard to describe. Like, it was doing this weird, like the carpet was like alive. Like, it was doing this weird thing where it's like moving like static, but it was like it had like these designs and stuff in them, and I could see like almost like these fractals and like all these like interesting designs, almost like they were falling over each other, and they were doing like this crazy like dance. And I'm sitting there, I'm just like amazed, like in amazement, just watching the carpet do this crazy stuff. And I also noticed the walls are doing the same thing, and like the rest of the room is like doing this crazy, like almost like the atoms in the room and in existence were doing like this pulsating, breathing thing. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like in shock and awe, just kind of watching all of this take place. And I must have sat there for a good, I don't know, like a good hour or so, like just watching the craziness unfold, and watching like all of this stuff going on around me. And I just kind of like did this, put my head down and like closed my eyes. And just kind of meditated and just kind of relaxed. And I started being teleported to to this world that was made up of like fractal patterns and like all kinds of like geometric, like you see the geometric stuff going on and all these crazy like designs and stuff and patterns, and this whole world was made up of this stuff, and it was all like very colorful, and it was all like almost like a technicolor kind of world. And I suddenly see myself as this insect, this crazy looking insect that was made up of like the same like fractals and patterns and designs and stuff. And I'm crawling along the ground, and I'm just, existing as an insect in this crazy insect in this crazy geometric world. And I have no like recollection of being a human. I have no like desires or any like I don't have any human desires or human like needs or anything. Like I'm just happily existing as an insect, minding its own business. What I can assume is an insect, I guess. Hang on, I gotta switch over. So, here I am. Just kind of existing in this landscape of fractal landscape of like geometric patterns and shapes. And I don't know how long I was there. I only closed my eyes for, I want to say, a few minutes, 5 minutes at the most. And I opened them. And suddenly I was back in my room, and I was in human form again. I was myself again. And I'm just kind of like dazed. But I didn't see the crazy like waviness that the carpet was doing and stuff. I think, I don't know how much time passed. Like, it must have been longer than 5 minutes, but it felt like a very long time. It felt like I was there for like an eternity. But the mushrooms had calmed down at this point to where it was just kind of like I could see like little bits here and there, like some like patterns and stuff going on. And I looked outside, and I looked off in the distance, and there's like this tree, these trees in the back. These trees like way off in the distance, or these line of trees, and they made like this. It's almost like they made this fractal geometric pattern, like the leaves like and the branches made this fractal geometric pattern, almost like infinitely stretching out into space and time. And I was just blown away at what I was looking at. It was almost like everything around me was doing that, and the rest of the trip. It was crazy because even when I looked back on my iPad, and I was watching like animal videos at this point, like cats and stuff, and I was watching this cat video, and it was just it was really cool because this cat that I was seeing in the video, like I could see like like very, it almost looked like high depth, and I could see like the fractal patterns and stuff inside its fur, and like the ground was like doing like this, made up of this fractal geometric stuff, the same stuff I saw outside at the trees. And I started noticing a pattern to everything I was looking at, and I started freaking out a bit. Like, I didn't like get into a panic attack or anything, but I just like started having an existential crisis. And I was just kind of thinking to myself, like why is everything doing this right now? Like, why is this happening right now? Like, why is this I'm starting to wonder if this is just my reality from now on. Like, if I was just gonna start seeing this stuff all the time. But eventually after coming down, that stopped. But it just freaked me out because it was happening a good like few hours after coming down from the peak. And there's this one point where I had paused the video and I was looking at this scene of this cat, and it was almost like everything just kind of turned into this fractal pattern. Like, I could still see the image, but it was like everything was like became this abstract like painting or image I was looking at, made up of fractal patterns and geometric shapes and stuff. And even looking outside, wherever I looked, it was like everything was becoming this geometric landscape. And I started feeling depressed out of nowhere. I didn't get depressed, like, thankfully I didn't get like too depressed, but like I started feeling like I wanted to be outside. Like, I started feeling like, because I looked at my iPad and I was like, I've been on my iPad for hours now. And I looked back at my life the past year or two, and I'd realized how everything had just become so stagnant in my life since the accident. And I'd realized that I was headed down a dark path in my life, and I was headed down a road I didn't want to take. And I genuinely got depressed thinking about it. And I felt like I wanted to get out more. I wanted to get outside. I wanted to experience nature more. And I wanted to get off my iPad more. Because prior to this experience, especially the first year of my accident, after my accident, that's all I ever did, was I stayed on my iPad. I watched a lot of depressing videos. I watched a lot of like shit that really shouldn't have been watching at the time. That just put me in a very dark headspace. And I was in a very dark place in my life, mentally and emotionally, and I just realized that the mushrooms showed this to me. And it was like they were trying to tell me, I talked to them like there's some kind of deity. Really, it's just this chemical solution in my brain telling me that you need to wake up. And it was like, you need to wake up, buddy. might be fucking depressing right now. But you've got to try to live your life. And, I was like, sorry. I don't know why this is so difficult for me to talk about all of a sudden. But, so I talked about this in my near-death video. I went over this, and I talked about this path I was heading down. And, I just wasn't in the healthiest mind state, whatever you want to call it, mental state. I just was not happy with my life. I wasn't happy because I felt like a big part of me died in that accident. You know, I'd lost the ability to write, I'd lost the ability to draw, I lost the ability to play piano, I lost the ability to do a lot of things that I really loved in life. It was like everything was taken away from me that I ever loved to do. And all I saw myself doing at that point in time in my life was watching videos on YouTube on my iPad. And maybe I would go out to a park every once in a while, and I would go hiking after my physical therapy appointments and stuff. And I put on this happy face most of the time, and I acted like I was doing okay, but I really wasn't. And people would ask me sometimes if I was doing alright. Like, my family members and people I knew who were close to me, and still are. And I would just lie to them and be like, I'm fine. When in reality, I wanted to die. And there were a few times where I had just about taken my own life because of how depressed I was at the time. And I was starting to get into taking painkillers because I had been prescribed Norcos and stuff to help with the pain at the time, and I realized the mushrooms woke me up and were trying to tell me that if you keep going down this path, you might not be here tomorrow. And it's weird because I started getting over my depression at this point, and I started being thankful for everything I still had in my life. And I started being thankful for my family, my parents, my sisters, everybody I ever knew and loved in my life. And I started realizing that there is still a way to live after what I went through and what I'd lost. And I just started going into this mindset or this mental state where I just felt this overwhelming wash of love for everybody I ever loved and knew. This overwhelming empathy for everything and everyone in my life. And I wanted to express it in any way I could. And I went downstairs and I hugged my mom. And I told her how much I loved her and everything. she of course asked me if everything was okay, and I told her I was fine. And I later explained to her, I told her, I'd taken mushrooms. It was funny because she was like, "Oh, that's why you're all of a sudden acting weird and you're in this weird headspace." But it's true though, because I felt like they were trying, the mushrooms were trying to tell me through love that everything's gonna be okay. And, I don't know, like, I was in such a dark place for so long that I'm so glad the mushrooms were good to me that day. Like I said in my Dream Entry ASMR video, I'm so glad that they were good to me that day because they showed me in a loving way that there's more to life than what I was dealing with. That there's things still worth living for in this life. And that you shouldn't just waste it. Like, I was given a second chance. I was given a second chance and I was about to just fucking end it all. And they woke me up and they were telling me that you were given a second chance for a reason. Given a second chance in this life, and you really shouldn't waste it. And so that's what I did. After that, from that day forward, I changed my habits and I quit taking my pain medication, and I went outside more. I talked to people more. I was more empathetic. I was already pretty empathetic before this, after my near-death experience, but even more so after this experience. And I went out and I gave to people who were in need what little money I had in my wallet at the time. Is there some kind of poor person standing on the street, or some family who had kids that had nowhere to go. And I realized that this made me feel better, that this helped me get through the most difficult time in my entire life, and helped me to feel some kind of purpose in my life, even though I felt totally worthless at the time. And there's just something to be said about empathy, and about how the world seems to lack it sometimes. About how powerful it really is to show love. I don't have much time left. I just wanted to share that today. I didn't realize I was going to go down I was going to go down a point where nearly break down, but I don't know. I guess it just reminded me of that, that dark time in my life, uh, and about me making a change, uh, and trying to make the best out of my situation at the time. I feel like didn't have. I felt like I didn't have see a way out. I don't know, but anyways, I'm gonna end it here. It's a pretty long video, but I hope you're doing well in your life. I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.